Reformed Church. Just something from Matthew 11:29. We know this verse. I just kind of wanted to show you something here. As you know, Matthew 11:28, probably even better. Jesus said, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Then verse 29, "Take my yoke upon you and learn of me," or learn from me, "for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you will find rest unto your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Just something that I know that we teach frequently at this church, and just something to remind you, but just about the yoke of the Lord. There are a lot of things that in our actions that can be done. There's a lot of things that can be improved upon in our actions and the way we do things, or in the way that we think or react to things. There's a lot of things outside, right? Sort of on the outside of the cup that can be changed. And the way that those things are changed, though, is through not taking on a yoke of all of those various different things. The word yoke here is really talking about like a service or like a burden that you take on for the Lord. There's only one burden that the Lord has given us. There's all the things that we've been taught that are right to do, all of our Christian lives, honoring your father and mother, and don't commit adultery, and don't steal, and all of those things are good things, but those aren't anymore the burden that God has put on us to do. And you may say, well, if those are good things to do, how are those things not our service to God? Our only service to God, our only yoke, which is that word yoke, you can look at our glossary. Brother Matt was just mentioning our glossary briefly. The word yoke means service. So when he says, "Take my yoke upon you," Jesus is saying, take this one service upon you, and that one service is what? He says, "Learn of me." Or a better translation might say, "Learn from me." Jesus teaching us. Despite all of the outward things that are good things to do, those things are not your service to God, though. The reason why God can say that honoring your father and mother is not your service to him, not committing adultery is not your service to him, living for Jesus outwardly is not your service to God. How can God say that there's only one yoke and one service? If you read John chapter 6, Jesus also said, he sort of backed up this verse. This verse, he said, this is the one service to learn from him. In John 6, he said, this is the work of God. When people ask Jesus, how can we work the works of God? Plural. They wanted to know all the different works that God wanted them to do. And they said, how can we work the works of God? Plural. And most of the church feels that their work for God or their service to God is many different things. And that's why they said, how can we work the works of God? And Jesus replied, this is the work, singular, of God. In other words, this is the only work that you need to do for God. He said, and that's to believe on the one that he sent. Believing on him. Sounds like the one yoke that he's talking about here, that is learning from him. You need to learn and believe who Jesus is, what he has done for you, and the reason why God can tell you, and this is a truth, right? This is not our church's slant on it. The reason why, with all of these outward things that need to be done in our lives, moral things, ministering the gospel, the reason why all of those things God can say they're good, and yet say there's only one work that he wants you to do for him, and that would be just believe in Jesus, or as he says here, learn from Jesus. The reason why God can say that is because if you do this one thing, all of those things come from this one thing. The work of God is not to believe and then live it out. The work of God is to believe. And when you believe, the Holy Spirit lives it out. That's what's meant by Romans 12, when he says that we are transformed by the renewing of our mind. What's the transformation? Simply said, just for the sake of time, the transformation is the living part. That's your outside, you living differently. That's the living part. And he didn't say be transformed. He said be transformed by renewing your mind. If you have to renew your mind and then live it out, then it voids that verse entirely. Be transformed by the renewal of your mind. What does that mean? The renewal of the mind does the transformation. This is why Jesus can say, just learn. How can he say just learn? He didn't say learn and live it out. He said learn. But how can he say just learn? Because if you learn, you get transformed. It's the learning that transforms you. if you have to do the learning and the transformation, you see, and I'm going to just wrap this up, but if Romans 12:2 is saying, if it lays out a cause and effect, and says that transformation happens by you renewing your mind, that's the cause and effect. The renewal of the mind is the cause, the transformation is the effect. That's not disputable with that verse, right? He says, by the renewal of your mind. If it's a cause and effect, and yet in the church we're taught this Sunday morning, churches across America and the world are learning about how you need to learn Jesus, but then you need to live it out as a two-step process, not that one thing is needful, like Jesus told Martha in Luke 10, one thing was needful, and that was to listen to his word. He said one thing was needful. But if I, instead of doing one thing, have to do two things, if I have to learn and then apply it, learn and live it out, then you've voided cause and effect. If your child wanted to play dominoes, and he set up all the dominoes, right? And by play dominoes, I mean like when you knock them over and they all kind of fall. The way you're supposed to do that is you're supposed to set it up so that you don't have to knock them all down. You only have to knock the first one down. That's what cause and effect is, right? It's not called cause and effect if the dominoes are spaced so far apart that I have to go and knock all of them down. Is that a cause and effect? It's not cause and effect. I'm just knocking them all down. It's only cause and effect when I do a cause, and the cause makes the effect. That's the nature of what cause and effect is, and it's the nature of the principle that God lays out. If I have to do the renewal of the mind and transform my life, then why am I renewing my mind? I'm renewing my mind so that it will transform me. And if my mind renewal of Jesus and what he's done for me can't transform me, then why am I renewing my mind? It's not a cause and effect. Now I'm not being transformed by the renewal of my mind. Now I'm renewing my mind and transforming myself. Totally different thing. You see, if you have to do the living and transformation, you're not being transformed by the renewal of your mind. You're being transformed by your own works. You see what I'm saying there? We are taught by our own work to renew our mind and then to live it out. God says, the one thing, the one yoke I want you to do for me and take on is to learn of me. The one work I want you to do for me in John 6 is to believe on the one that I sent. And I believe it's Luke chapter 10, where Jesus said that one thing, not two things, one thing is needful, and that was to listen to his word. He told Martha, one thing is needful, and that's to listen to my word. How can he say that only learning from him in Matthew 11, only listening to his word in Luke 10, and only believing in John chapter 6 is the only thing that's needful? Because it's by the renewal of your mind. Because everything else will happen in your life when your mind gets corrected on Jesus. And you say, but what about faith without works is dead? And obviously I've answered this plenty of times before. That principle is what I'm preaching on right now. Because if there aren't works, what's wrong? The faith is dead. You have to fix the faith and the works will follow. The works is not a second step. It's an effect of the one step that you're supposed to do. And hearing anything contrary to that is no longer being transformed by the renewal of your mind. Just an important thing to understand. The reason why Jesus said it's only one step and one thing is needful because everything else follows. If there is a problem with the works, it's actually a problem with the faith. Because the faith produces the works. Not faith and works. Faith produces works. Very, very different things. So anyway, I'll leave you with that. But that is the reason why the Lord has a one-step process for you. And none of this is to discount the fact that there are many problems in the way that we live and where God wants us to live at a higher level that's worthy of our calling. But those problems you're seeing outwardly is a thinking problem regarding Jesus, not a doing problem. We need to get our minds corrected to start thinking correctly about what Jesus did, who we are in him, what we've been provided through him. And once you think correctly, you will do correctly, automatically by the Spirit. As you behold Jesus, you're transformed as by the Spirit. Another verse to confirm that principle in 2 Corinthians 3:18. So just take all that in mind. People need their minds corrected. The Lord told me a long time ago, mental teaching. The reason why he told me that is teach their minds. Teach them what to believe. Teach them what to think about my son. Why? Everything else comes after that. People need their minds changed, though. That's what Reformed Church stands for, reforming people's minds, changing people's minds about Jesus. So anyway, I will leave you with that.
We hope you enjoyed this message from Reformed Church. If you have, please share this with someone else and help us get this uncommon truth out to the world. If you'd like to support this good news, you can do so at reformedchurch.com/give. Also on our website, you can take advantage of our free messages, articles, and even full discipleship courses. Start reforming your mind now at reformedchurch.com.